Well, here's something you don't hear every day. Realtors in Vancouver are actually saying no to listing homes. And no, it's not because we're too busy, but it's because in this market, if a home isn't priced just right, it's just simply not going to sell. And when that happens, everybody loses. And so right now we're seeing one of the biggest disconnects that I've ever seen between what sellers are hoping to get and what buyers are actually willing to pay. So homes are sitting, right? Price reductions, they're happening across the board. And a lot of sellers, maybe even you're left wondering what the heck is going on? Or maybe you're saying, should I wait for the market to shift and then sell later? Or maybe you're thinking, should I just try it and see what happens? Well, if you're asking those types of questions, you are definitely not alone. But here's the thing. There's a pattern that I'm seeing over and over again that is quietly costing people tens of thousands of dollars. And so in this video, I want to walk you through what's really happening from my side of the table and how some sellers are getting great results while others, they're chasing the market down. I still remember one of the first listings that I ever took when I was just getting started as a real estate agent. And this was a great home, right? It was well kept. It had a nice layout, great neighborhood. And it was one of those properties you feel really confident about as long as it's priced right. And so I sat down with the sellers. I showed them all of the recent sales. I gave them my honest opinion on where I thought it should be priced. But as many sellers often do, they felt that they had this number in their head, okay? And they said, let's just go ahead and try it at this higher price because we really need to get X number of dollars for our next purchase. And to be honest, at that time, I didn't really push back, at least not enough. And it was because I was new, right? And I didn't want to lose that listing. And so I said, sure, let's go ahead and give it a shot. And so we launched the listing and almost nothing happened. I mean, no calls, there were no showings. And while we waited for interest, the market, it started to shift underneath us. And so we ended up lowering the price and then again and then again. But by the time we actually caught up with where buyers actually were, that listing had gone stale. It was months later. And so the momentum was gone. And in the end, they sold for less than what they would have if we had priced it correctly right from the start. And that one, it really stuck with me because I realized that if I truly want to help my clients, I need to be willing to tell them the things that they might not always want to hear. And more importantly, I have to stand behind that. And maybe you felt that too, right? I mean, you're looking at your home and you're thinking it's worth more than what the data is telling us. Or, maybe your neighbor, they're insisting that it's worth more as well. Or perhaps it's your friend, and they're saying, why don't you just test the market and see what happens? And I totally get that. I mean, it's very emotional. It's a big asset, probably your biggest asset. And of course, you really want to protect that. But the truth is that the market does not care what you need. And I'm sorry that I have to say that, but the market doesn't care. It only responds to what buyers are actually willing to pay right now, today in this market. So while trying a high price might feel safe, by standing firm on strategy, that is where you're going to get your home sold. And I'm not the only one seeing this either. In fact, Global News, they recently covered exactly what is going on behind the scenes and why more and more realtors are actually turning down listings.
The inventory is stacking up, it's not selling. And so what's happening is basically, there's a lot of realtors, of course, out there working for free.
With home sales at their lowest since 2020, the expectations of sellers in a clear buyer's market aren't always aligned with reality.
And that's exactly what I'm seeing here in the Fraser Valley and Greater Vancouver. Sellers with good homes, even beautiful homes, but the price is just out of sync with what buyers are actually willing to pay. And in a market like this, that gap is the difference between sold and stuck. And also stick with me, okay? Because in just a minute, I'm going to show you how a small pricing mistake can end up costing you way more than you might think. But first, why are some agents walking away from listings? Well, it all comes down to this. If a seller's expectations are too far off from where the market is, it's going to be a losing game. And it's a losing game for literally everyone, right? There's usually 20 to 30 hours of work that's put in before a listing even goes live. There's things like your staging, there's photography, marketing, prep work, all sorts of things. And all of that adds up. And all of that is upfront. And there's no guarantee of a sale here either. So in a slower market like this, that is a real risk. And that's why you're seeing more agents, myself included. Sometimes we're saying no to listings that aren't realistically priced. Because in this market, pricing is the strategy. So let's talk numbers for just a second here. So right now in Vancouver, only 14% of homes are selling in a month. And in Surrey, it's just 9.3%. So what that means is 86% of homes in Vancouver and 97% of homes in Surrey will not sell this month. Now, it's important to understand that this isn't just one property type. This is across the board, okay? So we're talking condos, townhouses, detached homes, all asset classes combined. So yes, the numbers will shift depending on the neighborhood and the product type. But this is here to give you a big picture view of where the market is at. Now, of course, if you're wondering where your home fits in all of this and you want a realistic price and what it looks like today, you can get a free home valuation using the QR code. I'll put it up here on the screen somewhere. And it's going to show you what similar homes are actually selling for in your area and, of course, in your asset class based on real-time data. Now, back to the numbers. If we stop listing homes today, it would take over 8 months to sell everything currently listed for sale in Vancouver. And in Surrey, it would take more than 11 months. Okay, so let that sink in for a minute. 8 months in Vancouver and more than 11 months, almost a year in Surrey. So to put that in context, a balanced market, it sits around 4 to 6 months of inventory. And so this is a very strong buyer's market. And that means that buyers have choices, lots of choices. And sellers, you need to stand out. And this is where the emotion really starts to interfere with the strategy, okay? Because a lot of sellers, they get stuck on a number, and maybe it's what your neighbor got last year for their home, or what you maybe feel you need to sell your home for in order to make your next move. And that's completely understandable, and I get that. But it's also a classic case of what we call anchoring bias. So that's holding on to a price that no longer reflects today's market. And the problem with that is that buyers aren't looking at what your home used to be worth, right? They're comparing it to what else is available right now on the market. And if your price is even a little bit off, your home is going to drop to the bottom of their list. And of course, if it's way off, well, it won't even be looked at. They're not even going to bother booking a showing. And that's where things really start to spiral, right? Here's what I see happen all of the time in this kind of market. So sellers, you list too high, right? And then of course, nothing happens. And so you're forced to drop your price and then still no offer. So you drop it again. But by then, of course, the market, it has already moved still lower. And now your home has been sitting and it's gone stale. And then buyers, well, they start to wonder what is wrong with it. You've heard that before. What's wrong with it? Why is it not selling? Why has nobody made an offer? Well, this is meaning you're losing your leverage. And the longer it sits, the worse it gets. And then by the end, you're going to end up selling your home for less than what you would have if you had just priced it right from the beginning. And that's what I mean when we say chasing down the market. And it's one of the most expensive mistakes that a seller can make. And that is why sellers who are getting results right now, they're not guessing, right? They're pricing based on what's happening now in the market, not last year. They're making sure that their homes show incredibly well. They're responding to feedback very quickly. And of course, they're working with a realtor who is not afraid to tell them the truth. So understand that these are not distressed sales, right? These are smart, strategic sales. And of course, they are working. Now, look, if I or another experienced agent tells you what your home is realistically worth, and it's not the number that you're hoping for, I get it. That can feel frustrating, can even be disappointing or maybe emotional for you at times. But understand that a good agent, they aren't there to agree with you and to win your listing, right? They're there to protect your outcome, even if it means having that harder conversation up front. Because if we agree to list your home at a number that we know simply will not work, just to keep things comfortable, well, obviously that is not helping you. It's really just setting you up for failure. So yes, sometimes we say no, but it's not because we don't want your business, but because we actually care about the result. And in a market like this, more than any other type of market, honesty is a service, even if it's going to sting a little bit. And by the way, sometimes it's not the price that's actually the problem. It's what's inside your house, those little things that make buyers hesitate and make them walk away without even saying a word. And so in this next video right here, I'm going to walk you through 10 things you should never have in your home when you're trying to sell. And these are things that nobody tells you about, right? But every buyer notices. So if you want to know what those are, make sure you watch this video. And if you have any questions or want to talk more about your specific situation, feel free to reach out. There is a link in the description box below. Otherwise, I will see you on the next video.